at Kendal Mountain Festival with Sarah-Jane Dobner, the author of A Feeling for Rock, which has just won a prize at the BANFF Mountain Literature Festival. How are you feeling, Sarah-Jane? You've had a lot of attention, a lot of praise on the book, quite rightly. How are you taking it all in, or is it quite surprising?
It's been amazing. It's so unlikely. You know, it was such a sort of a bit of a quirky book. Yeah. And now it's suddenly won this, what was it, the Climbing Literature Award. And the reviews have pretty much been really delightful. And people have come up to me. I just signed some books in the bookshop, and this mother and daughter came along and I had to sign the book, and it's fun, you know. Yeah, I'm seeing it as a kind of peak of entertainment and quite surreal. That's where I'm going with it. It's quite surreal, so
but I mean,
I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Contributed to UKC for quite a long time. You've submitted a lot of poems and prose, like essays, and your work in the forums has been, I guess, divisive. And like, why do you think that is? Is it because you're writing about women's topics or topics that aren't traditionally covered in climbing media?
I don't know. Well, you'd have an opinion as much as me, because you read all the articles. I suspect it's a combination of that intersectional, feminist, anti-colonial. Like, to me, all of that's pretty standard, right? But in certain circles, perhaps not, because it kicked to the beehive or whatever. Possibly also the nature of the material, the way it's written, because I use syntax that's maybe a bit out of the ordinary, or the poetry, people a bit, you know, kind of alienated by the style or incensed by the style, isn't it? People either really like it or they're incensed by it.
You've got a very distinctive voice and a very distinctive style. What was your journey into writing and climbing generally?
Writing, I've always written. So I've always written poetry since I was really small, and songs. And I always knew which was a poem, which was a song. And I wrote a play by mistake. You know, like just stuff comes out and I'm like, oh. But I do walk around all the time often with bits of paper. Bits of paper and a pencil in all my bags, in my jacket pockets, in whatever. Or now with a phone, but phones are a bit weird because then you have to link to the entirety of the globe, which it's distracting. So if I go for a run and I'll get lines. I'll wake up in the morning, I'll get lines, and I need to write them down before I speak to anyone or have a conversation or anything. So it's happening all the time. It's like a bubbly pot. So I'm just like trying to grab it out the air, you know, get the lines, you know,
I
before they
think that's
disappear.
what Helen Mort said as well. Like she goes for a run, she takes the line for a run with her and so. But you've climbed for a long time as well. You said rock climbing has shaped my body, my bookshelves, my holidays, my home, the clothes I wear, the vehicle I drive, how I spend my money, and what happens when I die. So it's pretty much shaped your life, really. Like, what was your climbing journey? How did you get into it, and what places have you been?
So I started climbing around 1998. I think she was 18 months old, my daughter. And there's there's a bit of a habit for a lot of women to have, or maybe guys too, they have their kids and then they're like, hold on, this doesn't suit climbing anymore, this is way too impractical. But I only took up climbing when I had a toddler. So, and I got taken out by a boyfriend who was like, hey, I climb, come climbing. And I was like, no, I got friends who climbed for 10 years. I'm scared of heights. He was like, everyone's scared of heights. I was like, are they? He was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I go climbing then. And that was it. I proper got hooked. It's so interesting. And it doesn't get boring, which is also a Trevor Messiah quote. And it's so giving. And it properly it's given me so much climbing. It's given me a home and a community and an occupation and a sense of place. And I never had those before climbing. When I was 20, I was about 30 when I started climbing. They were 30 fairly chaotic years. And I feel climbing has absolutely, given me some sort of stability.
And it really comes across in your book. Like, it's a collection of poetry, essays, cartoons, interviews, prose. Why did you choose A Feeling for Rock? Like, there's a lot of kind of
as
tangible
a title.
touch. Yeah, I guess, as a theme, because I guess it runs through the book, like embodiment and kind of the sensuality of climbing.
Yeah, that's massive, isn't it? I did a master's in intersectionality, 2016 to 2018, and the thesis I did was on touch. So I was always interested in the tactile, and I did. So that was on Access to Touch by older British singletons, because we're a very sexualised culture. So you can only really get touch with one romantic partner. So it's problematic in our culture if you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. So I did this piece of research, and then part of the outcome of that was like people are getting touched with. I'm getting touched by feeling my socks, or stroking the cat, and I'm a bit like, well, I get that off the rock, So it came out of that study in a way. I'd seen it. I'd seen that's how it was, and had done sort of research on that. So I was aware of that, and I think most people will get that sensual touch, the movement, because it's the touch in your fingertips, but also the whole body touch with your body. You're kind of jammed in here, and your legs up over there, and whatever. You get a lot of interaction with the rock, but wouldn't necessarily put it in those words.
Yeah, I think
in those terms.
Like your traditionally male-dominated climbing literature has kind of overlooked those aspects, or wouldn't think or write about those aspects. Is that something that was it daunting to you, or was it just something you naturally felt confident doing because you thought about it?
I think I'm happily, slightly impervious to opinion. I think that thing from having put my foot in it for so much when I was younger, in the end you kind of a bit like...
Whatever.
I'm always trying hard, I'm not a person with any malice, so I'm never going to try and upset anyone. But you still got to live your life even if you don't have the kind of real cute social skills. So no, I just I go for a body truth, a visceral truth. So for like the poems, I was like, ooh, I get this feeling when I climb. And then trying to express that feeling. That's what I was trying to do, really, really to get it right. And I wasn't thinking at all how it would be received.
Yeah. I think that's to the benefit of the book, though. I think it's worked out really well. But also you write a lot about place and like Limnos, Lofoten. Where are your favourite places to climb?
Pembroke is the place that it all happened, really. I am a sea cliff climber, and I come from Bristol, so Pembroke is the default crag, and it's so beautiful. And it's so amazing, the rock's so brilliant. And I've had so many experiences over there for many, many years. And so the piece in there, What Happens When I Die, is a bit like, wow, that's where I put my ashes to be chucked off the cliff, is Pembroke. So that's got to be a favourite. Did go a trip to Lofoten.
Yeah, I've been there. It's
oh my God, it's so good.
One of my favourite places.
It sounds so amazing.
Awesome.
And I was so lucky because we had amazing weather. It would be just rubbish like anywhere else in terrible weather.
It can be hit and miss.
Totally hit and miss. So I went up there and just had, just breathtaking. You're on the globe and you're like, this is, how could it be this amazing?
Yeah. Yeah, in the essays that you've written for us as well, you focus more on the kind of cultural aspects of climbing, whereas, again, that's not necessarily been covered that much by male writers. So things like sexism in climbing, feminine issues in climbing, was that something, again, you just felt really confident to write about, and you felt that there was a gap in the market, or you just...
Yeah. I think there's more of that coming out, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, which is really cool stuff with women's bodies and bleeding and all of that. I can see other women, younger women, starting to do that now, and I'm like, wow, that would not have happened when I first started climbing. How amazing. Those essays I found hard to write. Poetry just happens. Like I say, I just wake up with it and it's cool. Those essays were
countercultural in some ways.
Yeah, because I'd done my master's and I kind of felt a bit of a duty to do something. I'm quite well placed, old enough to for it not to matter to me. The flack, you kind of anticipated there might be a bit of kickback. It was way worse than I thought, but I was a bit like, I might as well be the one to take the hit, in a way, raise the issues and do that because it doesn't matter to me. I know people, I've got friends, my place is pretty established. So it was quite funny when it all kicked off. I don't think any of the kicking off happened around me in Bristol. I really don't. People knew me down there, but I did get a lot of messages from, broadly say, young women being like, yeah, thank you, that thing, I experience this when I go to the gym, this thing's very difficult for me, blah, 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 blah. And they're starting out, they're not going to be able to write those things. But I'm thinking, well, they could show that essay to someone. Then they don't have to articulate it. It's just a bit like, it gives a bit of assistance. I was hoping to do something helpful.
I think so, yeah.
A little bit.
It seems from the conversations you're having as well, like you're helping other women to find their voice and write about things in climbing, and I guess not just climbing itself, but issues in wider society.
Yeah, but not just other women. Like, I tried the intersectional training is so important, so just any underprivileged voices. And if there's a criticism I would make about the book is that I failed to be intersectional all the way through. I mean, but the book is a bit mishmash, isn't it? So sometimes it does, sometimes it isn't. Smorgasbord, but then there's other things that are a bit focused. So like, on, I think, route setting, being like, there should be more women. And there's a bit like, well, but there should be more, all sorts of people of different demographics, So I kind of, I failed in that because it's hard. It's a hard thing to write, to be consistently intersectional without making it really long and clunky, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
I mean, I guess your essay on the perfect line about naming, claiming, and naming routes on rock, it's kind of got ties to colonialism and, naming a piece of rock after yourself, or a derogatory term or something, or a racist term. Yeah. That was one of the most... That essay prompted a lot of discussion in the forums, and I think it's quite positive discussion, mostly.
It really was. Yeah, and it was very, I would hazard, because you can kind of guess from people's photographs or profiles, that the vast majority of people, like you say, being positive, being productive, and whatever, were other white guys, kind of thing. There was very, very little input by women, I figure. It seemed to be about 40 pages in. There was one word by a woman, because a guy was like, is anyone else surprised by this? And she just put, no. Yeah, it obviously wasn't a safe forum for women to feel they could say stuff because they got savaged.
Well, I think
your moderation has improved, which is amazing. Like how one of the questions last night, someone said, "Oh, did you expect this change?" Because UKC, you've been remarkable. You as an organisation, you're a bit like, yeah, we don't want to print these racist names. We're not going to. And you unilaterally made the decision to just wipe them. I did ask Rob at the time, I was like, so Rob, when are you getting rid of the sexist names? And we both just laughed because there's so many.
Yeah, I know, there's so many, but yeah, we have made an effort.
And with the moderation, you've changed the moderation because you're trying to make it actively trying to make it a safer space to hear different voices. So one of the questions yesterday was, did you expect to achieve that change that you were writing? And it's like, well, no way. Yeah. No way. And it's just like massively rewarding to see anything I've written or contributed to trying to make the space easier for other people to walk in. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, I think you've done a lot to help that, and I think it's happened quite naturally. It doesn't feel like we've had to slog uphill to do it. I think it's just little bits and pieces, more people contributing like you to the website.
And you stretched out because you took a punt on me writing poetry. When I first wrote, you were a bit like, we don't really do poetry, but give it a go.
Because we hadn't published any poetry, and
No,
But
it's such a
I
great
liked
and now
it.
it's getting like 5,000 views. I'm like, these are poems. They're getting 5,000
It's
views.
true. And
That's
then-
nuts.
But also because we've been publishing you, like more poets have been coming up to us. And
Is that
stuff.
right?
Yeah, so you've sparked a
This is
poetry
making my
revolution.
day.
as
This
well.
is so fun.
So yeah,
I feel like a kid in one of those high seats where I'm a bit like, can I get down?
There is some rest. But
That's really good news.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
Yeah. But what's next for you? You've written your first book. Or?
Written the first book.
So what's next?
Well, usually it's a bit of a random thing, whatever pops out. What I've been doing, I didn't write for ages, which was quite funny. I wrote the book, and then for like months I was a bit like, my climbing went to pot, and I didn't write anything. I was like, oh my god.
I know the feeling.
Is that normal? I was a bit like, oh no, I'm a complete fraud. I can't even climb all right. And then in lockdown, I suddenly got into writing poems about people close to me, my daughter, my partner and stuff, but in super strict style. And I think that was something to do with lockdown. So I got into sonnets. So I wrote half a dozen sonnets, which are Shakespearean sonnets, which are incredibly strict in terms of rhyme and metre. And lately I've been writing haiku. Writing loads of haiku, which I've been loving, because again, I'm running and I've got lines, and I have to write them down. But the next project is my partner and I have just bought the bottom of a sheep field on Skye up in Scotland. So straight from here, we've got a van full of creosote posts and barbed wire. We're going to fence our plot 40-mile-an-hour northerlies, which is bound to be great.
Sounds like a good place to write, like a writer's retreat.
Well, I know, but probably in about 5 years' time. I mean, but so basically we're going to build a house.
Nice.
So I'm just going to come off social media largely and mix concrete, and I think that sounds perfect.
Good. Yeah, a good antidote to sitting and writing.
So
Well,
that's what's next.
Thank you, Sarah-Jane, and yeah, thank you for your event with Rob. It seems to have gone down really well, and yeah, hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.
He's such a star.
Yeah.
He's so great on that. It's been great. Thank you
Well,
ever so
thank
much,
you.
and delightful to meet you.
Lovely to
finally.
meet you after all the emails.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thanks so much.
Thank you.